my problem, when someone says stability, I think you have to understand the use of the word is very intentional. What does stability do? Stability is about maintaining a certain status quo, right? That's all we're doing right now.
Right.
What we're doing, even with the debt restructuring, there's a fantastic article on the Financial Times by Brad Sester, and this is the Financial Times, the global Financial Times, so not a leftist rag or anything like that. They are very clear that some of the goals that the IMF have given us are quite fanciful. I mean, and it's quite scary for me reading that, because they are looking at, for example, Zambia. Zambia is a country which has very similar debt to GDP as us, exports, similar export level, higher export level, but similar debt and similar revenue issues. They have been given a much tighter set of targets. And Sri Lanka, on the other hand, we have been given a tight set of targets with a very low revenue threshold. So if you look at the IMF projections, the highest our debt to our revenue to GDP is 15% starting from next year. Currently, we are at revenue to GDP of about 10%. That is with all this VAT. We had 20% in 1990. So if you look at the graph from 1990 onwards, our revenue to GDP is coming down. And then the only thing that Yahapalya tried very hard to increase. So if you remember, Ravi Karunanayake introduced a one-off super gains tax on all profits over 2 billion rupees. That was a one-off, 1 point. It was not a huge percentage, it was a few percent, but it made a big difference. And if you look at our revenue to GDP, it ticked up slightly.
Yeah.
But even then, even under an IMF program in 2016, the Ranil Wickremesinghe government, in each of their 4 complete years, they managed to increase tax to GDP to 11%. Their highest was 11.3 or 11.4, right? So I have to, it's not to scare anybody, but even if we reach the IMF, if we stick to everything the IMF says, and we hit every single target, which I don't think we have not hit a single budget for the revenue, if you can just check. I don't think maybe the latest one.
We have also a lot of the transparency targets have not been met. Like
but okay, the transparency is one thing, but if we achieve the revenue that they want us to achieve, and our debt becomes sustainable according to their analysis,
right.
If you just go to the latest press release from the IMF, if you go all the way down there, and there's a nice box, it shows about 30 or 40 economic indicators. Just go and scroll to the right and see what it says in 2027 and 2028. We have a higher total external debt than we do today. Yeah. We will have a public debt to GDP of about 105% of GDP. Right now we're at 114%.
And it will get worse.
Yeah, it will. The worst thing is there's a massive $50-60 billion trade deficit,
right,
which continues throughout the program.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, you have this on record, right? 2029, 2030, 2031, there'll be another IMF program guaranteed, because there's no way out of it.
Well, that brings